I almost threw it away without looking. Just a crumpled receipt wedged between a grocery list and a gum wrapper in the bottom of Logan's jacket pocket. But something made me smooth it out. Maybe habit, maybe intuition. And there it was, Tremonto. My heart skipped. That name used to mean something. It was our place. The soft lighting, the quiet clink of wine glasses, the way he'd squeeze my hand across the table and say, "Here's to us." That table knew our love story. Or at least, I thought it did. We hadn't been back in over a year. Life got busy, sure, but we never stopped loving that place. Or so I believed. The receipt said otherwise. A Thursday night, just 3 weeks ago. He'd told me he was working late, stuck with a client pitch he couldn't reschedule. I remember eating leftovers by myself that night, flipping channels, waiting for the sound of the garage door. And now this tiny slip of paper was whispering a different version of the evening, one with wine, maybe laughter, and someone who wasn't me. I didn't go into panic mode. Not right away. I just moved. Almost like muscle memory. Logged into our credit card account, pulled the last 2 months. And there they were, Tremonto, again and again. Thursdays, Fridays. All those late nights and deadlines suddenly looked different under fluorescent truth. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't get a full breath. I wasn't ready to confront him. Not yet. I needed more than a hunch. I needed to see how deep the knife had gone before I pulled it out. I sat at the kitchen table with the laptop open and my fingers frozen above the keys. The numbers blurred together, but the pattern was unmistakable. Each charge was a breadcrumb, leading me straight to a truth I didn't ask to find. 2 entrees, 1 dessert, wine for 2. Always the same total. Not once did he mention a business dinner. Not once did he bring home leftovers. I pressed my palms to my eyes and tried to will the ache away. But it was there, cold, sharp, and spreading. And you know what stung the most? It wasn't just the betrayal. It was where. Tremonto wasn't just a restaurant to me. It was the place we'd celebrated our anniversary 3 years in a row. It was where he once surprised me with a dessert that had "forever" written in chocolate script. Every inch of that place held echoes of us, of who we were before bills and busy schedules and separate routines. And now? Now it was his playground, a stage for whatever performance he was putting on with her. Still, I didn't say a word to him that night. I reheated the chicken from 2 days ago, poured a glass of wine I didn't want, and sat across from him as he scrolled through his phone, mumbling about work. He didn't look up. Didn't notice I hadn't touched my plate. I stared at the man who used to read my moods from a single glance, and felt like I was staring at a stranger, but I wasn't going to lose myself in his silence. Not this time. I just needed to wait, watch, and plan. That night, I lay in bed listening to his breathing, steady, unbothered. He fell asleep so easily while my mind spun like a carousel I couldn't get off. I kept seeing that receipt in my head, like it was glowing, pulsing, daring me to wake him up and demand answers. But something told me not to. Not yet. If I exploded now, all I'd get were excuses, half-truths, gaslight wrapped in charm, and I wasn't in the mood to be handled. Instead, I reached for my phone and scrolled through old photos, birthdays, anniversaries, laughing selfies at Tremonto, back when we still looked at each other like we were in on some beautiful secret. I wasn't just grieving a marriage. I was grieving a version of myself, the woman who believed in all of it, who saved special dresses for special nights, who trusted that when he said forever, he meant it. I missed her, and I wasn't about to let her be made into a fool. So I decided to wait, to gather, to breathe. I needed more than whispers and receipts. I needed the whole picture framed in clarity. If he had turned our place into something cheap, into a hideaway for his lies, then maybe it was time to take it back. On my terms. My timing. And trust me, I already had a plan forming, right there in the quiet. The next morning, I waited until Logan left for work before making the call. I kept my voice light, casual, even threw in a fake laugh. "Hi, yes, I'm just confirming a reservation my husband made last week. Logan Carter? For Friday night?" The hostess hesitated for half a second, just long enough to tell me she'd found something. "Yes, of course," she chirped. "Table for 2, 7 p.m., same time as always." I thanked her, hung up, and just stared at the phone like it had spoken some ancient truth. Same time, as always. It was almost insulting how easy it was, like he didn't even try to hide it. Same restaurant, same night, week after week like clockwork. While I was home lighting candles and waiting on texts that came later and later. And suddenly, just like that, the sadness started to burn off, replaced by something else. Cold, clean, focused. I wasn't going to cry about this anymore. No, if he wanted an audience for his betrayal, I'd give him one. But this time, I would be holding the spotlight. So I called back. "Hi again. I'd like to make a reservation as well. For Friday, same time. Under the name Sienna Carter, party of 6. The woman on the line sounded slightly confused, but took it down anyway. "A celebration," I told her. "Something I'd been meaning to do with friends." When I hung up, my heart was pounding. Not from fear, but from power. I wasn't just going to walk in and catch him. I was going to own the moment. Take back the table, the restaurant, and myself. I spent the next few days assembling my crew, the ones who'd seen me through every chapter of my life, from wedding jitters to late-night tears when Logan first started coming home distant. I told them I wanted to celebrate friendship, resilience, and maybe toast to new beginnings. They didn't press for details, not yet. But I saw the spark of curiosity in their eyes. And honestly, that was fine. Let the truth arrive with the wine. Let it pour slowly, the way real stories do. I picked the dress days in advance. Red, because there's power in red. A color that doesn't ask permission to be noticed. I booked a blowout, polished my nails, and practiced smiling in the mirror until it felt natural again. There was something healing in the preparation, like I was stitching myself back together one step at a time. This wasn't going to be some messy emotional ambush. No, this was going to be poised, beautiful, a performance of truth, and I had front row seats saved for the ones who loved me most. I even sent Logan a sweet text that morning. "Hope your meeting goes well tonight. Don't wait up." Let him walk straight into it, blind. Let him believe for one last time that his lies were seamless, that he'd pulled it off. I had no interest in screaming matches or dramatic exits. What I wanted was silence, the kind that speaks louder than any accusation. I wasn't going to take back just the table. I was going to take back the story and write my own ending. By Friday afternoon, the air around me felt electric, charged with something unspoken. I wasn't nervous, not exactly. It was more like standing on the edge of a long-held breath, knowing it was finally time to exhale. My friends texted me excitedly about outfits and rides, thinking this was just some overdue girls' night, and in a way, it was. Only I knew it would also be a reckoning, a return, a reclamation dressed in heels and red lipstick. I arrived early, walked through the doors of Tremonto like I owned them, because for years I did. The host looked up, and I smiled with the ease of someone who's been here 1,000 times before. Reservation under Sienna Carter. The way his eyes widened just slightly told me everything I needed to know. He remembered. He knew. They all did. I was the wife, the original, the one who used to leave tips with handwritten thank you notes. And now I was back, not broken, but brilliant. Our table was near the front, facing the entrance. I chose it on purpose. I wanted to see it all. The door swinging open, the recognition flicker in his eyes, the slow unraveling. My friends arrived one by one, bringing warmth, laughter, and a sense of calm I didn't realize I needed. I let the wine flow. I let them fill the space with joy. And all the while, I kept my eyes on that door, waiting for him to walk through it, still believing he was the one in control. It happened so quickly, and yet, I remember every second in detail. The door opened, and there he was. Logan. Button-down shirt, that same confident tilt of his head, the slight smirk he always wore when he thought he was 2 steps ahead of the world. But he wasn't alone. Her hand was in his, manicured, delicate, clutching his arm like she belonged there. They laughed as they stepped inside, as if walking into a memory they had no right to own. For a moment, he didn't see me. His eyes were scanning the room for their usual table, the one in the back, near the window. The same one we always used to sit at on date nights, before date night became just another phrase he threw around when guilt needed a cover. And then the hostess greeted him. Her voice was sweet, but I caught the flicker of panic behind her eyes. She gestured toward the table. My table. Our table. Occupied. "Oh, Mr. Carter," she said, soft and apologetic. "There's been a mix-up. That table was taken earlier. By your wife." And just like that, the air shifted. I watched him freeze. His smile faltered, his shoulders stiffened. He turned his head, slowly, like someone waking up in a nightmare. And our eyes met across the room. My heart didn't race. It didn't crumble. It stayed steady. Because I wasn't there to fall apart. I was there to rise. I stood up slowly, letting my chair slide back with a soft scrape against the tile. Every head at my table turned. My friends froze mid-sip, their conversations dropping like a curtain. I didn't need to say a word. They followed my gaze and understood. The man walking toward the chaos he'd created, dragging a woman who had no idea what she'd just stepped into. I picked up my glass, smoothed the fabric of my dress, and took one slow breath. Then I began to walk. The room stretched in front of me like a stage, and I didn't rush. I wanted him to feel every second of it, every eye that would turn toward him, every whisper beginning to stir in the corners. He stood there stiffly, still clutching her hand like it could anchor him. But nothing could. Not tonight. She blinked at me, confused, uncertain. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered how many nights she must have sat in my booth, sipping my wine, soaking in the lie he fed her. And when I reached them, I smiled. Not a cruel smile, not bitter, just knowing. I looked at him, and his face said everything his mouth couldn't. Guilt, panic, regret. I lifted my glass slightly like offering a toast. Not to him, to the end. "I see you're still ordering the usual," I said calmly, my voice steady and clear. "Funny. I used to think this place was sacred, but I guess to you, it was just convenient." She tried to speak first, the woman beside him, but her voice caught in her throat. Maybe she expected me to scream. Maybe she was bracing for some messy theatrical scene. But I wasn't there to give them drama. I was there to give them clarity. I looked at her. Really looked. Younger, sure. Pretty in that polished, curated way. But she didn't look confident. Not now. She looked like someone realizing they'd stepped into the middle of a story they didn't fully understand. The hostess stood off to the side, awkward and flustered, clutching the menu like a shield. I gave her a gentle nod and said, "It's all right. I have a table already." Then I turned back to him. "You know," I added, "when you said you were working late all those nights, I believed you. I really did. And all this time, you were just rehearsing lies under candlelight." I watched his throat move as he swallowed hard. He opened his mouth, but I held up a hand. No, don't. This isn't your moment. I pivoted, heels clicking against the tile, and walked back to my table, the one filled with laughter, with women who'd stood by me through decades of real life. They didn't clap. They didn't cheer. But when I sat back down, they lifted their glasses. So, I did the same. I turned toward the entrance, still holding my glass, and raised it. Not to him, not to her, but to the truth finally standing upright. And just like that, I was ready for the next course. I didn't rush. I let him stew in the silence, the kind that hums with heat, where every eye in the room is pretending not to stare. He was still standing there, slack-jawed, holding a woman who clearly wanted the floor to swallow her whole. I rose again, this time not to walk toward him, but to stand tall at my table. I lifted my glass, not shaking, not teary, just steady, clear, certain. To reclaiming what's mine, I said, my voice cutting through the room like a violin string. The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. The truth has a volume of its own. This place meant something to me, I told him. It held pieces of our history. And yet you brought her here, to our booth, our table, our rituals, like they were yours to give away. I looked straight at him, and then at her. I thought maybe you just wanted something new, but now I see. You just wanted something easy, something that didn't require you to show up. She flinched when I turned to her, and I almost left it there. Almost. But some things deserve to be said out loud. You picked the crumbs, I told her, voice low and even. You didn't steal anything. You were handed what was left after he hollowed out the real thing. She blinked fast, trying to look unaffected. But I saw it, the shift, the doubt, that seed of realization planting itself. And I knew I had said enough. The rest didn't need to be shouted. The rest would echo on its own. I let the silence linger for just a moment longer, not out of cruelty, but because sometimes silence says more than 100 perfect words. I turned back to my friends who were still watching with a quiet fierceness I'll never forget. Their eyes held no pity, just pride, support, a kind of unspoken sisterhood that wrapped itself around me like armor. I walked back toward my seat, spine straight, glass still in hand, and let the air settle behind me like the closing of a book. Before I sat down, I gave them one final gift. One last truth. I raised my glass just slightly and said, to freedom, and to finding out just in time. It wasn't a toast for revenge, it was for release, for clarity, for the gift of no longer wondering. Logan still hadn't moved. His mouth opened, then closed again, like he wanted to say something but realized he'd already said too much, with actions, with lies. With every Friday night he thought I'd never question. I didn't look back again. I didn't need to. Whatever happened at that entrance, the muttered excuses, the awkward shuffle out, the unraveling of whatever fantasy they had built, that was no longer my concern. I was surrounded by people who loved me for who I really was. Not a version, not a secret. The wine was warm in my hand, the food was arriving hot, and the laughter, real laughter, began to rise around the table again. I hadn't just reclaimed a place, I'd reclaimed myself. The waitress came by moments later, eyes wide with curiosity but professional to the bone. "Would you like to order now?" she asked, almost hesitating. I smiled. Really smiled. "Yes, let's start with the bruschetta, and another bottle of the Barolo." My voice didn't shake. My appetite had returned. Not just for food, but for life. For joy. For realness. I wasn't the woman waiting by the window anymore. I was the woman rewriting her ending, one course at a time. My friends leaned in, shoulders touching mine, sharing jokes and stories like they always did. But now, everything felt lighter, brighter, like I had unclenched a part of myself that had been holding tension for years. One of them squeezed my hand beneath the table, and that tiny gesture meant more than any grand speech. I didn't need validation from anyone else in the room. The people who mattered were already at my table, and somewhere behind me, I heard the door close. Faint, final. I didn't turn. I didn't flinch. Because the only thing worth watching now was what came next, and I was finally ready to see it clearly. By the following week, the moment had already taken on a life of its own. One of my friends had filmed part of it, discreetly, respectfully. And somehow, it made its way through our circle like wildfire. I never asked her to share it, but I didn't stop her either. Wordless clips. Me standing, glass raised, him stunned silent. It wasn't a scandal. It was a reckoning, a quiet revolution wrapped in red silk. And in every comment, every message, I felt it. Women saying, "I've been there." I filed for divorce that Monday, calmly, efficiently. I handed over the receipts, the records, everything he thought I'd never find. There was no screaming, no begging, no bargaining, just paperwork and a signature. He didn't fight it. He barely even looked me in the eye. And I realized then, it was never about the other woman. It was about the fact that he thought I'd never stop waiting, that I'd stay, keep the house warm, the table set, while he fed his ego behind my back. But I was done with crumbs. I was done with waiting. A few days later, I received a handwritten card from Tremonto's owner. He remembered me. Of course he did. "The real Mrs. Carter," he wrote, with a wink in his words and a bottle of Barolo waiting for me whenever I returned. I smiled reading it. Because somewhere along the way, I stopped associating that place with pain. It had become something else entirely. A symbol of what I took back, with grace, with fire, and with witnesses. I went back to Tremonto a month later, not with hesitation, but with intention. Same dress, same red lipstick, different heart. This time I didn't need to reclaim anything. I simply walked in as someone whole. The host greeted me like an old friend, and I was seated at a new table. Not our old booth, not some symbol of what used to be, but somewhere fresh. A place untouched by memory, ready to be filled with something entirely mine. My friends met me there, laughing as they arrived, hugging me like I'd returned from a long journey. And in some ways I had. We ordered whatever we wanted. No second-guessing, no shrinking ourselves. We clinked glasses not in rebellion, but in joy. I watched them talk, listened to the rhythm of their voices, and felt gratitude rise in me like warmth after a storm. There was no lingering ache, no leftover anger, just the peace that comes from finally choosing yourself. Later that night, I checked my phone and saw his name on the screen. A missed call, a vague text. "Can we talk?" I didn't open it. I didn't need to. There was nothing left to say. Not because I hated him, but because I was no longer standing in the past, waiting for an apology that wouldn't change a thing. I tucked the phone away, took another sip of wine, and leaned into the laughter at my table. This was the only conversation I needed. These days, Tremonto isn't haunted anymore. It's lit from within, not just by candles or chandeliers, but by something harder to define. Confidence, maybe. Peace. A kind of quiet power that lingers in the corners when you stop shrinking to fit into someone else's comfort. I've been back several times now, sometimes with friends, sometimes alone with a book and a glass of wine. And every time, it feels like a small celebration, not of what was lost, but of what I found when I finally let it go. Logan tried again a few months later, a birthday message, a memory he thought might make me soften. I didn't block him. I didn't even reply. That part of my life no longer needed closure. It had ended the way all great illusions do, in plain sight. And the beauty of it? I didn't just survive it. I shaped it. I wrote the final scene. I took back the table, the story, the voice. And I made it mine. The last time I sat there, near the window, I watched a couple across the room. Young, in love, unaware of anything but each other. I smiled, not with envy, but with peace. I looked down at my plate, then at the empty chair across from me and thought, the table was set for two, but I made it a feast for my freedom.
I never understood true betrayal until the day my father willed his priceless Steinway grand piano to my sister and left me the cleaning supplies he used to polish it. The revelation came during the reading of his will, 3 weeks after his funeral. In his attorney's office with its heavy mahogany desk and walls lined with legal texts that seemed to mock my shock. To my daughter Eliza, I leave my Steinway Model D concert grand piano, appraised at $180,000, along with all accompanying sheet music and performance recordings. Mr. Hargrove read from behind wire-rimmed glasses. The piano represents my life's passion and greatest achievement. I know she will honor its legacy. My sister Claire nodded solemnly, dabbing at tears with an embroidered handkerchief. She wore our father's favorite color, navy blue, in a tailored dress that whispered old money and tradition. Her diamond engagement ring caught the light as she reached for a glass of water. The attorney cleared his throat and continued, to my daughter Rebecca, I leave my piano maintenance kit, including polishing cloths, specialized cleaning solutions, and the leather-bound maintenance journal dating back to the instrument's acquisition in 1978. For a moment, I thought it was a mistake, or perhaps a prelude to something more substantial. I waited, fingers curled around the armrests of my chair, but Mr. Hargrove simply turned the page and moved on to bequests for distant cousins and charitable donations. The maintenance kit, a box of rags and polish worth perhaps $50. That was my inheritance after 32 years of being his daughter. After 2 decades of weekly piano lessons I never wanted but he insisted upon. After arranging my life around his recitals and competitions. There must be some mistake, I said, my voice thin in the quiet room. The piano was always meant to be shared between us. Mr. Hargrove peered at me over his glasses. I'm afraid there's no mistake. Miss Harmon, your father was quite specific about these arrangements. Claire wouldn't meet my eyes. She studied her manicured nails, perfectly shaped and glossy like the piano's finish that I had helped maintain every Sunday morning of my childhood. But I was the one who sat with him for hours while he practiced, I said, heat rising in my cheeks. I was the one who turned pages during his performances, who canceled my college graduation trip to care for him after his first stroke, who moved back home when his health declined. Claire finally looked up. Becca, he wanted me to have it. I was his protege. You never even liked playing. She was right about that last part. I had hated those lessons, hated the rigid perfection he demanded, the way my fingers would cramp from repetitive scales, but I had loved him, despite his coldness, despite the way he measured affection in perfect arpeggios and flawless recitals. Then why leave me the cleaning supplies? I asked, voice cracking. Why not just exclude me entirely rather than make this statement? Mr. Hargrove cleared his throat again. There is a letter for you as well. Miss Harmon, your father requested it be given to you privately after the formal reading. I took the envelope, its weight insignificant in my trembling hands. The room felt suddenly claustrophobic, Claire's sympathetic gaze unbearable. Without a word, I gathered my coat and purse and walked out into the crisp autumn air, letter unopened. 3 hours later, I sat in my apartment surrounded by cardboard boxes. I'd been in the process of moving to a larger place, anticipating that I might inherit some of Dad's furniture or perhaps even the piano. The irony wasn't lost on me as I stared at the letter on my coffee table. My husband David found me there, still in my funeral clothes, the envelope untouched. You're home early, I said numbly. David set down his briefcase and sat beside me, his arm warm around my shoulders. Meeting finished sooner than expected. How did it go? I gestured to the letter. He left Claire the piano, worth nearly $200,000, and he left me the cleaning kit. David's arm tightened around me. That doesn't make any sense. You were always there for him. Apparently that wasn't what mattered. I picked up the envelope, turning it over in my hands. He left me this letter too. Some explanation, I guess. Do you want me to leave you alone to read it? I shook my head. Stay, please. With unsteady fingers, I broke the seal and unfolded a single sheet of stationery. My father's elegant, slanted handwriting filled the page, the same hand that had marked up my sheet music with critical notations for 20 years. Rebecca, if you're reading this, you've learned about the piano. You're angry, hurt, perhaps even humiliated. You have every right to be. The piano was never going to be yours, not because you weren't worthy, but because it would have been a burden disguised as a gift. You never loved music the way Claire and I did. You performed adequately but without passion. What you did love was taking care. You organized my life, maintained my home, polished not just the piano but everything around you until it gleamed. You were the one who remembered birthdays, who knew when the piano needed tuning, who kept the maintenance journal more faithfully than I ever did. The cleaning kit is not an insult, though I imagine it feels that way. It represents the only genuine connection we ever had. While Claire and I shared music, you and I shared Sunday mornings with lemon polish and soft cloths, working in comfortable silence on the one thing we both treasured. I've made arrangements with Mr. Hargrove. The maintenance kit contains more than cleaning supplies. The false bottom of the wooden case holds the key to a safe deposit box. Inside you'll find what I couldn't give you in life: freedom from obligation. Use it wisely. Your father. I stared at the letter, reading it twice more before looking at David. What does it mean? He asked gently. I don't know. I stood up, suddenly restless. The piano isn't being delivered until tomorrow. The cleaning kit is already at Claire's house with everything else. David checked his watch. It's only 6 o'clock. We could go there now. She's hosting a memorial dinner for Dad's colleagues tonight. She wouldn't want us interrupting. David raised an eyebrow. The dinner she didn't invite you to? Get your coat. 40 minutes later, we stood on Claire's doorstep. Her large Georgian home was lit up. Cars lining the circular driveway. A catering van was parked near the side entrance. Staff in black uniforms carrying trays inside. Claire answered the door herself, surprise flashing across her face before her society smile reappeared. Rebecca, David, this is unexpected. I need the cleaning kit, I said without preamble. Dad's letter said there's something important inside. Claire hesitated, glancing over her shoulder at the guests mingling in her foyer. Classical music, one of Dad's recordings, played softly in the background. Now isn't really a good time. Could you come back tomorrow when the piano arrives? We could do it together. No, I said firmly. I'd like it now, please. Something in my tone must have convinced her. She nodded stiffly and gestured for us to follow her upstairs to her study. Away from the party, the room was immaculate, decorated in blues and creams, with framed photographs of Claire with our father at various recitals and competitions. I didn't appear in any of them. She opened a closet and brought out a polished wooden box I knew intimately. I had helped Dad select it years ago, choosing the cherry wood with brass hinges, watching as the craftsman engraved my father's initials on the lid. Here, she said, setting it on her desk. I don't understand why he'd hide anything in there, but feel free to look. My hands remembered the contours of the box, the slight resistance of the latch, the way the lid needed a gentle push at the back corner to open smoothly. Inside, arranged in precise compartments, were the familiar tools of piano maintenance: specialized cloths, brushes, polishes, the leather journal with its meticulous entries. I removed each item carefully, setting them aside while Claire watched impatiently from the doorway. When the box was empty, I ran my fingers along the velvet-lined bottom, searching for irregularities. See? Nothing, Claire said. Now if you don't mind, my guests. Wait. My fingers found a slight indentation at one corner. I pressed it and heard a click as a false bottom released. Beneath it lay a small brass key and an envelope. Claire stepped closer, her composure slipping. What is that? I opened the envelope first. Inside was a bank statement from an offshore account in my name, established 20 years earlier with monthly deposits. The balance showed just over $2 million. Behind it was a deed to a property in Vermont, a lakeside cottage I remembered from a family vacation when I was 12. It had been my favorite place. The only 2 weeks when Dad had put the piano aside and simply been present with us. The final document was a handwritten note. Rebecca. Claire received the piano because she needed it. Her identity, her sense of worth, is tied to my approval and the musical legacy I represented. You needed something different, freedom from expectations, space to discover who you are beyond the role of caretaker. The cottage is yours, as is the account. I've been building it for you since the day you told me, at 12 years old, that you wished we could stay at the lake forever. I was a poor father in many ways, too consumed by my own ambitions to see yours clearly, but I did see how you came alive in that place, away from the pressure of performance and perfection. Consider this my attempt at amends. All my love. Dad. I sat heavily in Claire's desk chair, papers trembling in my hands. David read over my shoulder, his hand steady on my back. Claire stood frozen in the doorway. What is it? She finally asked. I looked up at my sister, my father's true musical heir. the daughter whose talents he had recognized and nurtured. For the first time, I saw beyond her perfect appearance to the anxiety beneath, the constant striving to maintain his approval even after death. He left me freedom, I said quietly, and he left you the burden of his legacy. 2 days later, after a tense conversation with Claire and a long discussion with David, I sat in a rental car outside the Vermont cottage that was now mine. Snow dusted the pines surrounding the property, the lake partially frozen in the February chill. I hadn't been back here in 20 years, but the place looked remarkably unchanged, a sturdy stone and timber retreat nestled among tall trees. I used the brass key to unlock the front door, holding my breath as I stepped inside. The air was cold but not stale. Someone had been maintaining the place. A stone fireplace dominated the main room, surrounded by comfortable furniture draped in protective covers. Large windows overlooked the lake, capturing the winter landscape in natural frames. In the corner, impossibly, stood a piano, not a grand concert Steinway like my father's, but a simple upright with warm wood tones. On top sat a small card with my name written in my father's hand. I approached it cautiously, as if it might disappear. The card contained just one line: play what brings you joy, not what brings you acclaim. I lifted the cover, revealing keys that were neither pristine nor perfect. This was a piano that had been loved, played, enjoyed without the pressure of performance. I pressed a key experimentally, the sound resonating in the quiet room. For the first time in years, I felt drawn to the instrument rather than obligated to it. I sat on the bench and placed my hands in position, not for the classical pieces my father had insisted upon, but for a simple song I had loved as a child. My fingers were rusty, the melody imperfect, but as I played in that quiet cottage that was now mine, I felt something long dormant awakening, not my father's passion for technical perfection, but my own appreciation for the simple joy of creation. David found me there an hour later, still playing, tears streaming down my face. He set down our bags and sat beside me on the bench, not speaking, simply present as I rediscovered a part of myself long buried under obligation and expectation. That night, as we sat by the fireplace with mugs of hot chocolate, I opened my father's maintenance journal. Beyond the meticulous records of tunings and polish applications were margin notes I'd never noticed before, small observations about my childhood, moments he'd treasured but never spoken aloud. Rebecca helped polish today. She has her mother's careful hands and thoughtful focus. Rebecca fell asleep during practice again, curled on the window seat, played softer so she could rest. Rebecca's graduation today, immensely proud though I couldn't say it properly, must try harder to show her. The final entry, dated just weeks before his death, read, arrangements completed for R's inheritance. Hope she understands someday that the piano was my voice, but never meant to be hers. She deserves to find her own music. 6 months later, Claire called me from New York. Our conversations had been strained since the will reading, limited to necessary legal discussions as we finalized our father's estate. The piano needs maintenance, she said without greeting. I've tried other services, but they don't do it right. I smiled into the phone, looking out over the summer green lawn that sloped down to the lake. I'm pretty busy here. The music program at the local school is just getting started. I had begun teaching basic piano to children who had never had the opportunity for lessons, focusing on enjoyment rather than perfection. The cottage had become a gathering place for community music events, informal and joyful in a way my father's regimented performances never were. Please, Claire said, her voice softer, I don't know how to maintain it properly. Dad always said you were the only one who understood the piano's needs. I heard what she wasn't saying, that she missed me. That maintaining our father's legacy alone was harder than she'd anticipated, that perhaps she needed her sister back in her life. I could come for a weekend, I offered, bring the cleaning kit, and maybe, she hesitated, you could play something? The house is too quiet with just me. I thought of our father's note, play what brings you joy. I'd like that, I said, but I choose the music this time. When I returned to New York the following weekend, I brought the maintenance kit, now containing not just my father's supplies but my own additions. Claire and I spent Sunday morning polishing the Steinway together, sharing memories and beginning to rebuild what had been broken. Later, I played for her, not the classical pieces our father would have chosen, but music that spoke of lakeside mornings and quiet joy, of freedom found in unexpected places, of a promise hidden between piano keys that had finally been fulfilled. Revenge is a dish best served from the corner office. I remember the day they fired my father like it was yesterday. I was 19, a summer intern at Sterling Technologies, watching from my cubicle as security escorted him out of the building. 25 years of loyalty ended with a cardboard box and a humiliating walk of shame. Budget cuts, They told him. Nothing personal, but it was personal. I knew because I'd accidentally seen the emails while filing documents for HR. They'd replaced him 2 weeks later with the CEO's nephew, fresh out of college. No experience, but the right last name. That was 10 years ago. Now, I sat in my private jet reviewing the final acquisition papers for Sterling Technologies. They had no idea that quiet little Sarah Maxwell, the forgotten intern from a decade ago, was about to become their boss. Miss Maxwell, my assistant's voice broke through my thoughts. The board meeting is scheduled for 9 a.m. tomorrow. All the paperwork is ready. I nodded, setting down the papers. Perfect. And they still don't know? No, ma'am. The acquisition has been handled entirely through shell companies. As far as Sterling Technologies knows, they're being bought by Nova Industries. I smiled, thinking of the look that would cross CEO Richard Sterling's face when he realized who really owned Nova Industries. The same man who smirked as he signed my father's termination papers would soon be signing his own. The jet began its descent into New York. Through the window, I could see the Sterling Technologies building, 50 stories of glass and steel crowned with their pretentious logo. Soon it would all be mine. Your father called again, my assistant added quietly. He still doesn't understand why you insisted on him coming to New York tomorrow. Dad had no idea what I'd built over the past decade. After his firing, he found work as a high school technology teacher, making barely enough to get by. I'd helped quietly over the years, sending anonymous bonuses through his school, making sure his mortgage mysteriously got paid off, but he never knew it was me. I'd started my company in my garage, just like the tech giants everyone worshipped, but unlike them, I stayed in the shadows. No press interviews, no public appearances, no social media presence. The few photos that existed of me were carefully curated to be forgettable. When Forbes tried to profile me for their 30 under 30 list, I declined. Let everyone think Nova Industries was run by some faceless corporation. The anonymity gave me freedom to build, to acquire, and now to get revenge. The next morning, I dressed carefully in a simple black suit. Nothing flashy, nothing memorable. In the mirror, I looked like any other corporate executive. Perfect. The board is assembled. My assistant reported as we pulled up to Sterling Technologies. Mr. Sterling is apparently in quite a good mood. He thinks the Nova acquisition will let him keep his position as CEO. I checked my phone one last time. A text from Dad, at the hotel you recommended. Still don't understand why you wanted me in New York. Sweetheart, don't you have work today? You'll understand soon. I texted back. The security guard barely glanced at my ID badge. Sarah Maxwell, Nova Industries representative. I was just another suit to him. Certainly not the woman who would own the building by lunch. The elevator ride to the 50th floor felt familiar. I'd made this trip hundreds of times as an intern, carrying coffee, delivering mail, watching silently as entitled executives made decisions that ruined lives. Sterling's secretary jumped up as I entered. Ms. Maxwell, Mr. Sterling and the board are waiting in the main conference room. I paused at the door, straightening my jacket. Through the glass, I could see Richard Sterling at the head of the table, laughing with his executives, the same laugh I'd heard when he joked about trimming the dead weight after firing my father. The room fell silent as I entered. Sterling stood, extending his hand with that practiced corporate smile. Ms. Maxwell, welcome. We're so excited about this new chapter with Nova Industries. I shook his hand firmly, remembering how he hadn't even bothered to shake my father's hand that last day. The feeling is mutual, Mr. Sterling. Please, call me Richard. He gestured to an empty chair. Shall we begin? Actually, I said, staying standing, we should wait for one more person. I took the liberty of inviting someone with a particular interest in this acquisition. Sterling frowned slightly. I wasn't aware. The door opened and my father walked in looking confused. He'd aged in the past 10 years. His hair more gray than black now, but he still carried himself with the same quiet dignity. Sarah, he looked around the room, clearly puzzled. What's going on? Sterling's face went pale. James Maxwell? What is he doing here? I smiled, pulling out my chair at the head of the table, Sterling's chair. Please, everyone sit. It's time we had a long overdue conversation about the future of Sterling Technologies. Now see here, Sterling sputtered. This is highly irregular. The acquisition agreement. I cut in smoothly. Gives me full authority to make any personnel changes I see fit. As the owner of Nova Industries and now Sterling Technologies, I intend to exercise that authority immediately. The room went absolutely silent. Sterling's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. My father stared at me, understanding slowly dawning in his eyes. You? Sterling managed finally, But you're the quiet intern, the one you never noticed. I finished for him. The one who fetched your coffee and filed your paperwork. The one who watched you fire her father for no reason except nepotism. I leaned forward. Yes, I'm that Sarah Maxwell, and I now own your company. Dad sank into a chair, his face a mix of shock and something else. Pride, maybe. Sarah, honey, what did you do? I opened my briefcase and began distributing documents. What I'd been doing for the past 10 years, building something bigger than Sterling could ever imagine. Nova Industries is just one of my companies. We're worth roughly $11 billion as of this morning's market opening. Sterling's face had turned an interesting shade of purple. This is impossible. You're lying. Would you like to see the paperwork? I slid a folder across the table. It's all there. Ownership documents, acquisition agreements, transfer of control. As of 9 a.m. this morning, Sterling Technologies belongs to me. The board members were all staring at their copies, reality sinking in. They just discovered that the young woman they dismissed as a mere representative was actually one of the most powerful CEOs in the country. You can't do this, Sterling whispered. I already have. I stood up. And my first act as owner is this, Richard Sterling, you're fired. The words rang out in the silent room. 10 years of waiting, planning, and building had led to this moment. I watched as security entered, my security now, to escort Sterling out. You'll regret this, he spat as they led him to the door. You have no idea how to run this company. I smiled, thinking of the empire I'd built while he wasn't looking. Actually, I do. I learned everything about how not to run a company by watching you. I turned to the board. Now, shall we discuss the future of Sterling Technologies? Or should I say Maxwell Technologies? The board members straightened in their chairs, suddenly very attentive. Amazing how quickly loyalty shifted when power changed hands. Dad was still staring at me, tears in his eyes. All this time, I reached over and squeezed his hand. All this time, I was building something worthy of your legacy, Dad, something that would make things right. But this was just the beginning. Sterling's humiliation wasn't enough. I had plans for his precious company, plans that would transform it into something he never had the vision to imagine. The quiet intern he'd never noticed was about to show him exactly what she'd learned in his building. And this was only the first act. The news of Sterling's ousting spread through the building like wildfire. By lunchtime, every employee knew that the quiet woman in the simple black suit wasn't just another corporate representative. She was their new owner, and she had orchestrated one of the most dramatic takeovers in recent business history. The press is already calling, my assistant reported, handing me a stack of messages. Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Bloomberg, they all want to know how the mysterious CEO of Nova Industries managed to stay hidden for so long. I set the messages aside. They can keep wondering. We have more important things to handle first. My father still sat in the conference room, now empty except for us. He hadn't said much since the revelation, just watched as I reorganized his former workplace with quiet efficiency. Why didn't you tell me? He finally asked. I sat down beside him. Would you have let me spend 10 years pursuing revenge? No, he admitted. I would have told you to let it go, to focus on building something for yourself, not tearing others down. But that's exactly what I did, Dad. I pulled out my tablet, showing him Nova Industries' portfolio. Look, technology innovations, renewable energy projects, educational initiatives. I didn't just build a company to get revenge. I built something that matters. His eyes widened as he scrolled through the projects. This is incredible. All those mysterious school funding programs, the technology grants, they were from me. I finished. I wanted to help teachers like you, who actually make a difference in people's lives. A knock at the door interrupted us. Sterling's nephew, the one who'd replaced my father, stood there looking nervous. Miss Maxwell, I just wanted to explain about 10 years ago. I raised an eyebrow. Pack up your office, Mr. Sterling. Your position has been eliminated. He fled, and I turned back to my father. That felt good, but I wasn't done yet. The next morning, I called my first company-wide meeting. The main auditorium was packed, everyone from executives to maintenance staff. They all wanted to see the woman who pulled off the impossible. Many of you knew me 10 years ago, I began, standing at the podium. I was the intern who delivered your mail, organized your files, and listened while you discussed firing loyal employees to cut costs. The room was dead silent. Today, I'm your boss, and things are going to change. I clicked to the first slide of my presentation. Starting now, Sterling Technologies, soon to be Maxwell Technologies, will implement comprehensive employee protections. No more arbitrary firings. No more nepotism. No more treating people like disposable resources. I outlined my plans, profit sharing for all employees, educational benefits, child care facilities on site, the very things Sterling had dismissed as unnecessary expenses. But how can we afford all this? One executive called out. I smiled. The same way Nova Industries affords it, by valuing our people as much as our profits, by understanding that loyalty goes both ways. I paused. By not wasting money on things like the private golf club membership Mr. Sterling charged to the company while laying off workers. That afternoon, Richard Sterling held a press conference outside the building. I watched from my new office, his old office, as he tried to spin the story. This hostile takeover is a personal vendetta, he declared to the cameras. Sarah Maxwell is using her father's termination from a decade ago to justify. My phone buzzed. A text from my PR team. Should we respond? No need, I replied. Instead, I sent out a company-wide email announcing immediate raises for all support staff, funded by canceling executive bonuses. Let Sterling rant to the press. I was busy actually running the company. The days that followed were a blur of activity. I restructured departments, eliminated redundant management positions, and implemented new policies. The old guard resisted. Of course, 3 vice presidents resigned in protest. Good, I told my assistant as she reported the resignations. Have HR post those positions internally first. Let's promote people who actually do the work. A week after the takeover, I found my father waiting in my office. He'd been quiet lately, processing everything, but now he held a newspaper with my face on the front page. The article calls you the shadow CEO, the billionaire who built an empire in secret just to get revenge. He set the paper on my desk. Is that really what this was about? I walked to the window, looking out at the city. When they fired you, I learned something important about power. The people who have it don't want you to know you can take it from them. I turned back to him, so I became invisible. I let them think I was harmless while I built something they couldn't ignore. And now I'm going to show them how a company should really be run. I smiled. Starting with the employee education program I'm naming after you. His eyes misted over. Sarah, the James Maxwell Technology Education Initiative. I continued. Fully funded college scholarships for employees' children, plus a special grant program for high school technology teachers. He hugged me then, something he hadn't done since I was a teenager. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. Not because you succeeded, but because of how you're using that success. A knock at the door interrupted us. My assistant entered with an urgent expression. Ms. Maxwell, Richard Sterling is downstairs. He's demanding to see you. I checked the security feed on my tablet. Sterling stood in the lobby, red-faced and disheveled, nothing like the polished CEO who'd fired my father. Send him up, I said. It's time to finish this. Sterling burst into my office minutes later. You think you've won? You think you can just walk in here and take everything I built? I stayed seated, calm. Everything you built? You inherited this company from your father. The only thing you built was your golf handicap. You smug little. He caught himself, trying to regain composure. I have friends in this industry, powerful friends. They won't do business with you. You mean like Anderson Tech or Global Systems? I pulled up their logos on my screen. Nova Industries acquired them last year. Your powerful friends already work for me. I stood up. Face it, Richard, you're not just fired, you're obsolete. He slumped, suddenly looking old. What do you want from me? Nothing, I replied. You're not important enough to want anything from anymore. Security will escort you out. Don't come back. After he left, my father shook his head. Was that necessary? Yes, I said firmly. He needed to understand that the power he abused for so long is gone, that the people he looked down on now look down on him. I picked up the newspaper with my picture. But you're right. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about proving that success doesn't belong to people like Sterling. It belongs to people who work for it, who build something meaningful. The next day, I called another company meeting. This time, I didn't talk about the takeover or Sterling. Instead, I outlined my vision for Maxwell Technologies, research initiatives, community programs, employee development. 10 years ago, I was an intern with a plan. I told them, today, I'm your CEO, and I got here by understanding something Sterling never did. A company is only as strong as the people who build it, not the ones who inherit it. Looking out at their faces, from executives to maintenance staff, all equal in my eyes, I saw something Sterling never had, potential. So, I concluded, who's ready to build something amazing? The applause was deafening. As I left the stage, my father caught my eye from the front row. He wasn't just proud now, he was inspired. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying something, sometimes it's about building something better in its place. Sterling had taught me that, though not in the way he intended. I returned to my office, not Sterling's anymore, and got to work. There was still so much to build, so much to improve, and this time, everyone would know exactly who was in charge. The quiet intern had found her voice, and she had quite a lot to say.